You don't put a structure together, an aircraft together before it's ready to fly and pretend you're flying it. Hashtag airfix. Well, welcome back to episode 2 of the Cadet build. This is the freeflight glider from Igabo Models. So, first episode you saw me build the fuselage. And on episode 2 what we're going to do is we're going to make the fin and rudder. We're going to make the horizontal stabiliser, and with a bit of luck I think I'm going to be able to smash out the wings for you as well. Things you're going to need, it's all built, so the horizontal stabiliser and the fin are all made from this. So these are bits we'll cut off strips to suit. Don't look at the other side and think, oh, I've got to cut them up in little squares. It's actually the whole length that we're looking for. The other thing you're going to need to do the fin is you're going to need these two. Just be very careful cutting these out. Take your time, because this is quite easy to break off. You're also going to need that. And now, with the plan, I've pinned it down to my work table. You can cover this in cellophane snap wrap. You can also get a candle and then just get, you know, those little tea lights. You can rub the tea light over the area where you think the glue is going to go. To be honest with you, with the fin and looking at the wings, there's not massive glue areas, so I've actually just, for the time being, on the fin and rudder, I've just taped mine. I don't think that's going to make significant differences to the, it's not going to knock it out of kilter whatsoever. So let's crack on and let's show you how I'm going to do the fin and rudder first. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is these actually need gluing together. So I'm going to glue these together using some aliphatic resin. Little tip here, just make sure that when you've glued them, just sit them down on the hard surface like that, and then offer it across there like that. Then you're going to make sure you got it nice and square. So those we've got to laminate. Next thing I'm going to do, this is in your kit, and we want just one length of this to build the fin with. So I'm just going to going to give this a little bit of a gentle sand. My advice is just run one way like so a couple of times. If you go backwards and forwards, you might pucker that up and break it. So I have my laminates gluing with aliphatic. Now, a little tip with this aliphatic, it's a brilliant glue, but it definitely is even better if you can try and clamp the two surfaces. I know that might look, this looks like a bit of overkill, but it's definitely better and will go off quicker, I believe. So that, I've got that there. Now what I've done is I've got my strip that I cleaned up, and all I'm slowly doing is I'm just making up the frame. Now if you can, try not to pin through the wood. So what I've done is I've put 2 pins this side, and then I pushed up against the other side. So basically I'm using the pins to clamp the wood in place. Just make sure that obviously the pins are not going to be in any cross struts. It's going to make it difficult. So all I'm going to slowly do now, and another good little tip, is just to make sure that your end is nice and square. So what we're going to do now is, I'm not going to cut this slope in here. There we go, we're going to pop that on there like so. Now you'll see here that it actually says to make this gusset from scrap wood. I'm going to add the gusset after I've got these cut to pieces. Right, so these are all the pieces cut to the correct lengths. It's all dry fitted, and now we're going to glue it all together. Right, so this is your tailplane, and it's done in two halves. Things I wanted to show you. This is your elevators. This is your trailing edge, the rear of the trailing edge. These are the winglets, or the wing tips. Remembering that we're going to make this little triangle here, we're just going to fill it with a bit of spare. Now remember that it's actually built in two halves. So here's all these little bits of what I call Jenga. These are all going to go in here like these. Just make sure that you get the angles and the notches right, because there are some different lengths, and the reason it's done for that again is that these are all made in, so these with the spruce that you've got in your kit, so you need to make 4 of these up in spruce like so. And remember that although you see these joining just here, they are not glued. They're all made, so there's just two halves. So what I'm going to do is, that's my bits I've got already. Then I've got some more of the strip wood which I've sanded clean, and I'm now going to make up the strip wood here and all of these along here, just the same way as I did with the tailplane. You could, if you want to, get away with pinning this in place, just to hold it in place, but it's entirely up to you. So anyway, that's the next step. Again, I'm using alphatic again. Okay, so this is the tailplane finished. Now, little caveat to this, I have spoken to Zeb, and he suggested if we're going to go free flight to remove these, because these are really here for if you want to use RC equipment. One other thing I have done is I have just given those, I have just radiused just the very end, so that when these slide together, so that's how they're going to go together, that they just don't, it's just easier for them to engage. So this is going to need sanding, so the leading edges are just going to need rounding, and then the trailing edge is just going to need tapering at the back and just finally smoothing off. Now, so the very last part of the construction is the wings. Now, my advice is just take your time cutting out the ribs. You're going to need this template. You've got your two leading edges, which is this square material. Two trailing edges. You're going to need two pairs of these because this is your wingtip. And these are actually two, so what you basically want is you're going to need two of these for each wing, and that's the actual spars. You've got one at the bottom of the rig, one on the top. Also, hopefully you haven't chucked the rest of your spruce out, because that's going to be the main spar. And the one thing to remember is if you look at the ribs, we've actually got these that go towards the main part of the joining of the wing. So these extra slots are here for a reason, which we will talk about. So get those all cleaned up, get your plan laid down, and let's finish these wings off. So the wings, I have repinned the plans to the board. I have waxed both of these. I've not bothered with the sellotape. I'm going to try the wax method. Now, it says in the instructions, pin the trailing edge in place, glue the tip pieces and the lower spar and pin into position. Now, little tip here, I would get your tip pieces in place with the bottom spar here, like so, and my advice is don't pin this spar if you can help it. My advice is don't cut that to length, but leave this long, and I would just fix that in place with the pin here, because you know that's not going to damage it, because it's quite a thin spar and it's a fairly, even the smallest pins I've got. So my advice is I'm going to pin that one in there. I'm going to pin that there in place because that's going to hold it. If I need any extra, what I am going to do is I'm just going to pin one or a couple. So when I've got it pinned down like so, I'm going to pop it in there like that, and I'm just going to pin that at a very, very slight angle like so, because what we want to do is hold it in place, and it's not a good idea to be putting a hole through the main spar of your wing. So if you can, try and avoid only putting pins at the end like here, and the end at this end, this end, and then possibly just clamp pinning the rest of it. So I'm just going to get this all set up, ready to go. Right, so we've got our tips, bottom spar, trailing edge in. Now just get your standard ribs, so don't get fitting these, because these ones with the 3 slots in, that's something completely different. Just add all your ribs up to here, and then we're going to talk about the next stage. Right, one top tip if you're using this tool, basically the idea of these 3 here is to help you line them up and get them square. give this a couple of licks either side with the file, because that's quite a tight fit, and if you're not careful you just end up placing your ribs in there and lifting them straight off. Quite frankly, what I normally do is I just use this steel rule with a square edge like so, and do that. But then you can actually check that, but it's marked on the plans anyway, so yeah, just go as you feel. Okay, that's all the primary ribs in. What you just got to remember is if you look at these two ribs, they are slightly offset slightly differently. The reason being is this the spars that we're going to make are actually bonded top and bottom, so they're basically going to look like this. They're overlapping each other, and that's hence the reason for the stagger. So the idea is just match your one up with the corresponding offset. Then you need your tool here, and we're looking at this angle. Hold that on the bench like so, and then we're going to slide that along by the rib, and that makes that rib lean back slightly, and that's to account for the dihedral. So both of those end ribs, make sure that you've got them leaning in. Okay, all the ribs in. A couple of top tips about dropping the top spar in. You'll notice it says in the instructions to break it just here. What I've actually done is I've actually marked where it finishes at this last rib, and I've just put a little knife mark in mine like so. So I'm going to drop that in there, and then that's going in there like so. I'll just dry fitting this first. That's obviously dropped in. Now I'm going to glue that in a moment. Now the other thing about the leading edge is, because it's square, if you hold your leading edge up to the ribs like so, and then all I've done is I have literally gone along every rib and marked with a pencil exactly where each rib is, like so. And then I'm going to add the glue, and because it's square I'm going to rotate that and stick it in place, and of course the pencil's not going to show because it's hidden by the ribs. So I'm just going to I'm leaving these long at the moment because it's just easier just to let it all glue off, and then we'll trim it to shape. I will take a little bit off of there, but right, I'm just going to glue in the top spar and the leading edges just as I've showed you. The wings are done. Now something very important we need to speak about, and that's making these spars, because if you get this in the wrong orientation, it's going to really spoil your day. So let me talk you through the process of making these spars and getting these in the right orientation. So these spars, let me show you something. This is how I did it, and this is going to literally save your day, because if you get these in the wrong orientation, they're not going to match on the offset. And when I say the offset, that's how I've not finished these yet. I'm going to actually take the corners off of those, but let me give you some idea. What they're supposed to do is fit in there like so. Obviously I'm going to take that off. Now if you happen to have it the other way, it won't fit. Let me show you what I mean. So what I've done is I cut 4 lengths, and as it says here, I've overlapped them slightly. This side, the left side, is touching the bench. The right side, with this little bit of scrap, I then sat underneath there just like that. and I then used alphatic glue, and what I actually did was I did that overnight when it was all in place. I made 2 of those. If you do this side flat if you do this side flat and that side on top of there like so, so you've got the gap this side, it'll be the wrong orientation. So the golden rule is, make sure that your left side is touching the bents and the right side is elevated. Come on, who doesn't, you know, put it together and just fly it around before you've actually finished it? Right, so the basic structure of the Cadet is now done. I'm going to end this video here because we've done basically all the major construction. The other reason is, what I'd like to do is spend some time on the next video, which is finishing and covering. And when I say finishing and covering, a lot of the sanding, it might be a little bit boring for the more experienced pilots, but what I really want to try and do is just give some general tips to possibly people who are this is their first glider, because anybody experienced will know that actually if you start smashing around with a sanding block, you can just wipe the whole thing out very quickly. So that's what I'm going to do. The next video will be covering and finishing. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. There's plenty more coming, and I'll see you real soon.